Today is January 8th, 2015. This is the Board of Education, Hyde Park Central School District's Board of Education meeting here at Netherwood Elementary School. And I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss confidential matters pertaining to the employment, future employment of a particular person or persons and collective bargaining negotiations, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. We're now in executive session. Could I have a motion to return to open session, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry.
Opposed? Thank you. We're now in open session.
On board.
We now have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
It's on the other side of that tall guy.
The flag was beyond Perry.
There are no agenda modifications for tonight's meeting. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda, please?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And now we're at Pride.
Okay, a few things. Just before the break, at the Dutchess County Regional Chamber of Commerce breakfast, our students performed our high school concert choir. The audience is about 300, and they did an excellent job, and we were very proud of them. They have to get up super early to get there and arrive in Poughkeepsie at 7 o'clock in order to do their performance. Also, we had two, and this is just a coincidence, I would have done this regardless of where we are, but Netherwood was named the School of the Week in the Northern Dutchess News, and the feature was Brad Leach working with students doing some coding and programming. So the newspapers were able to capture that, and they were identified as Student of the Week. If anybody wants to see this, we do have it on file. Yes, congratulations. It was definitely worth a feature. Also, many of our schools do contribute to food drives, can drives. Netherwood does an exceptional job in that area. And recently, and Rick, if I'm repeating something you've already included, my apologies, but the Claudio Cares Foundation sent out a special thank you to Netherwood for their collection of non-perishable goods that go to local food pantries. They supplied 20 boxes of food for Claudio Cares Foundation with over 3,400 pounds of food since April 2012. So congratulations, Netherwood. I was unable to attend the Dwayne Davis dedication, but I know some of our board members, especially a famous scorekeeper, was here, and some of the other board members. So I know, Dan, if you could say a few words about that tournament.
The tournament was, well, actually what happened was
dedication.
Roosevelt hosted part of the Dutchess County Coaches Association Holiday Tournament. It happens that the tournament was renamed last year as the Dwayne Davis Memorial Tournament. Dwayne had been very instrumental in establishing a program which run for, I'm familiar with it for at least 15 years, going back to when my oldest kid started playing in it. And it was a wonderful event that day. Considering it was a holiday weekend and many people were away, the building was packed, the crowd was wonderful, and the tribute from the coach was moving. What Dwayne has done in the years he's done it. Dwayne's family was there, the team was on the court, and better than 25 players came back as a tribute to Dwayne, to honor him as they made the ceremony. And right now, if you go up to the high school, you'll see that there is a banner under the scoreboard on the score table side identifying that it is the Dwayne Davis Court. That information will be painted onto the court this summer and be permanent from then on. But it was a wonderful thing. And what pleased me even as much was at the end of the tournament, the Arlington Boys High School team won the tournament, and their coach spent the interview after the game speaking for about a third of his comments that dealt with the team and what a great performance they had. The other two-thirds dealt with how he felt honored for himself and the team to be the first winners of that tournament in Dwayne's name, and mentioning the fact that the court had been dedicated to, at Roosevelt, to Dwayne's memory, and it was a nice thing. It really was a nice thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing this summer, after the court is reworked, to see the inscription of Dwayne's name there. As Greer may have alluded to, I have a significant attachment to it. Dwayne coached all of my boys in basketball, although he left before the youngest of my kids graduated. Unfortunately, that was the year that they won the sectional. Dwayne may have felt a little cut short because he built up the team and some of the players that appeared on that final year when they won the tournament, and represented Section 1 at that time in the regional activities. But it was a great accomplishment. And funny thing about it was both of my daughters also were coached by Dwayne on the side and worked for Dwayne because he ran a basketball camp for a number of years. And all 8 of my children worked and learned an awful lot of basketball, but a lot more in how to work with kids and how to dedicate and how to be dedicated from him. So it was well beyond just basketball skills that Dwayne contributed to my family. And all 8 of my kids were directly touched by him, including the day I mentioned. My son contracted cancer his senior year in college. He had surgery, removing a major bone in his leg and replacing it with a donor bone. Unfortunately, about 3 months later, he developed a very significant infection. He was operated on and was under critical care for 2 weeks before he was moved to a regular room. But the second day of his critical care, which was midweek, I turned around and seen Dwayne Davis standing there. He drove from New York to Philadelphia, visited with Dan for an hour, and then drove all the way back to be at class the next day. A true indication of what a dedicated man he was.
Thank you. Okay, tonight we have some official pride, and hopefully everyone associated with this is in the audience, but we have the Girl Scout Silver Star Award Project, and that was to refurbish the Netherwood Nature Trail, Annie Dolan and Leah Straight. And do we have representatives? I can't see, they're hiding. Oh, good, thank you. You're hiding behind adults. Come on up. Oh, we don't have a podium tonight?
Over there.
Oh, we do, okay. Well, so we can capture you on television for TV land. So on behalf of the Hyde Park Central School District and the Board of Education, we would like to congratulate you for this significant accomplishment. Long overdue. This was a project accomplished over the summer, and it is an incredible job that you've done. Not only that you've done, but you had to do a lot of management working with all kinds of adults to get them to help and participate and coordinate, get donations both in materials and labor forces. And for those of you who don't know, the Silver Star Award is the equivalent of the Boy Scouts Eagle Award. So it is one of the highest achievements. Hopefully you'll continue going in your endeavors, but you're truly a role model for your peers. You are already a tremendous asset to our community, both in Netherwood and the broader community. So we would like to just publicly congratulate you and thank you for a job well done. We'll be sending you certificates so that you have certificates on behalf of the school district. And I don't know if Doug wants to say anything other.
I just How did you get adults to do stuff?
Let us in.
Very carefully. Oh, but congratulations.
So, again, this is just to really congratulate you and to publicly recognize you. This is a very high achievement, and we are so proud of you. We look forward to seeing you grow and all the wonderful things you're going to do for our community in the future. So thank you very much. Congratulations. And I would like to add that, please, in the warmer weather, come and see the nature trail for yourself. I'd also like to thank Craig publicly, one of our facilities employees who did a tremendous amount of work on this, again, volunteering. But please come visit the nature trail, and if you're brave enough, do the zip line.
Okay. Any other?
Pride? No.
Is it? Okay.
Lots of pride.
That brings us to the mid-year.
We have a superintendent's report.
Oh, superintendent's report. We skipped over that.
Rich presentation.
Yeah.
I think we have
I
this
skipped
first.
over two things.
Two things?
I'm trying to shorten the meeting, you know.
I hope I have the most updated. So under superintendent's report, I had a couple of things to report on. One, the Haviland Middle School heat pumps have been successfully installed over the break. We did a full test on Sunday as if students were in school, just to make sure that everything went smoothly. A reminder, this is a small part of the larger heating repairs that will take place, but the lead time in getting the approvals and the materials and then the actual work itself will be ongoing, most of it starting next spring and summer. But the heat pumps we felt were critical as a first step. We were very pleased that we were able to hijack them through the approval process and get them installed. And thank you, Elliot, for all of your work in that area. With that said, we are in the cold season. We have isolated heating issues here and there. Actually, in this school, we have an isolated heating issue. Two of our classrooms, they are monitored very closely. It is not comfortable when we are experiencing heating issues. In this building alone, today, for the first time, we had one classroom that did go below the state guidelines, and they had to be moved to the library. So we have aging buildings and a facilities crew that is on top of everything, but again, we don't have perfect systems, and we don't have equal heating in every single space throughout the district, but we do monitor it diligently, and when we experience anything that goes below a guideline, the students are moved. If you remember, last year we were moving 12 to 16 classes at Haviland on a daily basis for a multiple monthly period. So we are working on every heating issue that we know of in these extreme cold weathers. The same with owning any older home. It's a constant monitoring repair. But so those are heating issues. Today was also the coldest day of the year so far. The other report that I had is I sent to the board for consideration, maybe at the next board meeting, if they wanted to adopt a resolution on field testing. And again, field testing is an important component. It's always been something that we've done, but in the last few years, the amount of testing has grown exponentially. There are other remedies. The state could provide the funding to have the field testing embedded in the tests. They could have outside agencies do it. There are other ways to accomplish field testing and not have some of our students subjected to 4 straight weeks of testing in a row. So this resolution, if you are interested as a Board of Education in making that statement, would be sent to the State Education Department to ask them to rethink the addition of field testing at the end of a testing season where some of our students sit for, 3 and 4 weeks in a row on testing. And again, the concept isn't to get rid of field testing entirely. It's to either pay for it, embed it, but to do it in such a way that it's not having our students sit for another assessment situation.
Are we discussing this?
Yes.
Right at the moment? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a little torn on the subject. I mean, I think if you complain about the tests not being appropriate, then you have to put some skin in the game to do testing. And it seems to me that, there's 700 school districts, right? If 100 school districts was a representative group, that would mean each school district would only have to do this once every 7 years.
That would be lovely.
Well, so, I mean, so
Yeah.
what's the problem?
I'll give you an example of what it's looked like in Hyde Park before it gained any media attention. 3 years ago, pretty much, in my 5 years, every single year we do field testing. Maybe not in every single building, but in, I would say in about 3 of 4 or 5 of the buildings, and in multiple grades. Never for math and ELA, so one building might be chosen for math, one building might be chosen for ELA. 3 years ago, we started to become very concerned with the amount of field testing we were experiencing. 2 years, because it seemed that 4 of our buildings, were asked again for the 3rd time in a row to do the field testing. I don't know, Rick, maybe if you have any numbers in a minute, you can share. Then 2 years ago, I had one building, we received word that, 3 of our buildings were going to do field testing. Not happy about it, seemed to be adequate notice. Good soldiers, give the students the field testing. A week before the field testing was going to occur, we received another letter saying that now another school was going to be field tested, and I thought something seemed odd. And so I started poking around, and I finally received an answer, not from our district superintendent, but from another district superintendent, and said that technically you don't have to do the field testing. And I said, well, we've never said no. I've never even thought to say no, but we only have a week notice. And at that point, he told me that, well, what happens is if somebody refuses, then there's trickle-down effect. So we were trickled upon. And I said, well, at this point, with this building and not enough time, we're going to trickle on somebody else. And then last year, we again, for the 4th year in a row, received letters that 3 of our 4 elementary schools and our middle school were going to have to do field testing yet again. And at that point, we made a determination to say yes to some, no to others, so that we were, not just saying a blanket, no, we're not going to do field testing. So they're not managing the system so that it would be every 7 years.
So why don't we fix that? I mean, it seems to me that the testing isn't bad. It's the way they do it. And if it's mandatory, then they should have a system where it rotates around. It doesn't mean it's a 45-minute thing, right? It's not an all-day test.
No. It is on the heels of several weeks of lengthy tests.
I do understand that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
No, the state could, they could embed more field test questions in the test itself. They do some of that.
Well, could I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Because, if you embed questions, does it mean the test gets longer, or some of the questions don't count? And if you get the question in that embedded thing right, you don't get any credit for it?
I don't know.
So that doesn't sound like a good plan to me, because you wouldn't, the student wouldn't gain anything out of that at all.
I don't think so. I'm actually not 100% sure of that. I'm not sure.
The tests do get longer, and the field test items do not count.
It gets longer.
The test gets longer, and those items are not counted.
So
So students can spend a lot of time on certain questions that are not going to benefit them at all,
that doesn't make sense.
and that could have a significant impact on the actual test score they achieve.
It could.
Who's doing the test development? Is that the State Department of Education, or is that a private company doing it for the state?
It's both. They outsource some of it, but a lot of the tests are teacher-developed questions. They bring in groups of teachers to develop them, but then Pearson has a big hand in that as well.
So how did it resolve the fact that each state is developing its own questions with the broad-based statement that said this is a national testing and gives a national rating? Or is that just another fictional answer we're getting?
Well, our New York State tests don't become part of a national test. That's a different test that once in a while we get, which is called the NAEP, the National Education Assessment Program. So when you look at the national comparisons, that's because periodically our students sit for the NAEP assessment.
So basically, if you tried to compare scores between states, you've got no real way of doing it under normal circumstances.
Right.
Currently, many of our students sit for standardized testing for the state already, right?
Oh,
So,
yes.
English
3
la-
through 8
Engli-
every year.
English language, as well as math and science, right? But we also have students that are sitting for tests that are directly related to teacher evaluation. Is that true?
Yes, multiple tests.
Okay. And there's a test for that purpose at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year?
Well, there's the state assessment, and then there's the local measures, the locally developed assessment.
And how many tests does that involve?
It depends on what grade level you're in. If you're, let's take a 4th grader. If you're a 4th grader, you're taking the state ELA, the state math, the local assessment, and then in every single one of your special areas, you take an assessment, that's called the vocabulary assessment, so.
And are the students graded, or do they get any sort of feedback from these tests?
From our local assessments, and in some cases, the state assessments don't come back in time to give students any feedback.
So the students do get some sort of feedback from these tests?
From the local assessments. And eventually, in the fall, the parents get the results of the state assessment.
Okay. From what little I understand of testing, the point of testing originally was to inform the student and the classroom teacher of the student's ability to perform the work or understand the material, and serves the purpose of then pointing the student at it, reinforcing those areas, therefore improving the quality of the education.
There's actually a history of both. I mean, 40 some odd years ago when I was in, school, we took standardized assessments, and you got your ratings back, and you'd get your little graph, and it would tell you how well you did, and they were standardized tests that basically informed the larger school about how they were addressing the curriculum. So standardized testing in and of itself isn't new. New York State had a system of standardized testing in what we called benchmark years, 4th grade, 8th grade, and then, of course, you have your Regents examination, and then with the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, or with the authorization of No Child Left Behind, we went to testing the children in every grade level, 3 through 8. So in the last decade, the amount of state assessments to determine how you're doing comparatively against the standards in the state and calibrating your curriculum, which is another component of standardized assessments, were less frequent than they are now.
Okay. So I didn't mean to imply that standardized testing was new, merely that there could be an educational benefit to testing, but in much of the standardized testing or the testing to evaluate teacher productivity, there's marginal educational value in those. That's the thrust of my statement. And I guess I'm not asking a question.
Okay.
However, I guess I am interested to find out if there is educational benefit in those tests.
There certainly is some, and there could be more. Certainly, when we get the results, you can look at the item analysis. Teachers can look at the item analysis, even though it's hindsight because the children are really pretty much moving on. But you can look at what you've done instructionally and how your students grew and match it against those state assessments. The problem is that we don't receive the scores back really in a timely enough fashion. They're working on it. The turnaround time is getting quicker. They're releasing more of the test items so that it can inform instruction. So there is some of that going on. It's not in an ideal state, but yes, there is a means right now to have some instructional value from the state assessments. Certainly, we have one of our directors here and several teachers sitting in the room that give the state assessments, and they certainly look at the item maps on an annual basis and modify the curriculum accordingly, and that is definitely part of our process.
We also conduct our own diagnostic testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the summary, in my mind, and I'm going to oversimplify that, and professionals in the room, please forgive me for that, but I think that there's plenty of standardized testing being done. I think that we've reached the point of diminishing returns on the standardized testing that we're already doing. Furthermore, I think that many of the standardized tests are being developed by an outside company who is being paid for that service. And I'm suspicious that part of the testing that we're discussing here, I'm sorry, what's the term?
Field test.
Field tests, goes towards their development needs. However, Doug does have a point, and that is that if we're going to have to take these tests, they should be meaningful. Therefore, I am in favor of sending a letter such as the prototype that you've given us here. However, I would like to see us do our fair share of field testing. And according to the statistics that you and Doug mentioned a moment ago, that would be one test every 7 years.
Yeah, if they did it that way, but
Well,
it seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, my point is, I'm willing to commit to, I think we should contribute, but I think that the level to which we should contribute should be no more than one field test a year.
We do a lot more than that.
Just so I understand, there's roughly 700 school districts in the state, and they're saying they're doing 100 school.
No, I said that as an example.
Okay.
They're not doing it.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so we don't know what the real formula is. I mean, have we been given anything to tell us? Because it's not the entire district that gets tested at any one time. It's schools and grades within schools. So, I mean, it would take more effort than necessary to figure out what that really is working out to. But, I mean, I've just, and you were headed there, and I think you kind of got there, was what do we get from this test that they don't get from all the other standardized tests that we're already doing? I mean, is there something unique about these tests? I mean, is there an explanation that I haven't seen that says why is this test better than so many other standardized tests that we've gotten? Because I'm in favor of testing to see, for progress and to help curriculum direction, but is it just another, are we just throwing another layer on that perhaps if we were a little more creative, if someone were to share test results, we'd get the same information from a test that's already taken?
Well, the problem with the field tests is those are the questions that are used to build the tests for the ensuing years. So you're actually building the test for the future.
Okay.
So they can gauge whether or not a question really is valid. So if, in the field test, the statistics show you that this question was like off the wall, that question is then removed from future testing. So, and it's an interesting concept because all the students, you need to get the bell curve out of the test, and then the state determines the cut score anyway. So, well, that's a whole other different thing. But but yes, these are the field tests that help build. This is, and again, field testing has been going on for 30, 40 years. I think the reason why these types of messages to the state are being delivered is a direct result of the new annual professional performance review system. Nobody balked at field testing. We moved to 3 through 8 testing in English language arts and math, 5 or 6 years ago at least?
Oh, longer.
Longer, 7 or 8, 9? We've had 3 through 8 testing for many years. The problem was once they did the APPR, the Annual Professional Performance Review, and they said in order to evaluate teachers and principals, you need to now give the 3 through 8 testing, and you need to add a layer and say you also need a local measure. And then on top of that, so I'm a 4th grade teacher. I have my state assessment. And you have a local measure. So now I'm a 4th grade student. I take the state assessment, I take the local measure. Because we are responsible for giving all teachers a grade, I'm a student in 4th grade. I take my state assessment and I take my local assessment with my classroom teacher. I now have to provide a score to the state for my physical education teacher, my art teacher, my music teacher. So here I am now, the 4th grade student. I'm taking an assessment in phys ed to help the state evaluate the teacher. I'm taking an assessment in music. I'm taking an assessment in, what did I say, phys ed, music?
It's one of those.
Art, one of those. Yep. The state assessment, the local assessment, and the reason why we're talking about this is because the system can't hold much more testing. So I think more than the philosophical debate about field testing, it's how much more can we do if we're doing all this testing and now we still have to do field testing. And the field testing is pretty much almost every building, 1 grade, 1 subject each year. So it's more about, I think, sending the message to figure something out so that we're not just over-assessing the kids. That's my take on it. And there's been a movement to, and then the state in their infinite wisdom said students can opt out of a test. And so we had a movement of students opting out of a test because, just to be clear, the parents aren't allowed to opt the kids out of the test. The kid has to refuse the test. He has to tell his 3rd grade teacher, nope, not taking it. And so then the question became, I'm a student, and I said, I'm not taking sorry, I'm not taking your test this year. And then now the student gets the field testing. So people were starting to opt out of field testing, and more of us were finding out that they were optional. And when I stumbled on it as I said, I stumbled on it by accident 3 years ago when I got a last-minute field testing, and I said, whoa, I can't do this to this school. And I found out it was optional, and then word started to spread, and it became another thing where we could say, slow this train down. So I don't know if you want to think about a different response than field testing, or...
I actually have other concerns with, whereas high-stakes standard testing has a negative effect for students from all backgrounds, that paragraph, I understand the concept of high stakes, but it's not the students, it's the district that's the high stakes. It's the teacher, the high stakes, because it's not graded correctly. In other words, it seems to me if I have a group of students that perform at a 95% level, and I teach them for a whole year, and they at the end of the year they're at a 90% level, state says, great, boy, you did a good job. Boy, they're up in the 90%. Yet, in that case, those students regress. Whereas students who normally get in the 45 range and make it up to 55, that teacher didn't do a good job because the student didn't pass. So it should be relative to the student. And I understand that every classroom has a variety and a level of different things. But we are in the digital age. We do know what the differences are. We certainly can track that. And it should be a relative score on how well a teacher performs, not just a cut score. Well, if you did 65, then that's okay.
The cut score is for the metrics used for the rating of the teacher does calibrate the growth of each individual student, and then there's certain weighting for students with disabilities or English language learners. So the teacher does get credit for the growth of individual students, not on the field test, but.
Okay, well, that's never stated. I haven't seen that stated in any newspaper article and anything that says, oh, the teachers are being unfairly graded. And given what I thought, I would agree with it. But if they are being graded based on the relative performance of their students, then I would argue that that's pretty fair.
But that metrics is only used for the state assessment. And so in the only research study that's been done on the metric used for the state assessment, one thing became clear. The metric is sound. However, we don't have valid and reliable assessments yet because the curriculum was flawed in its implementation. We haven't had enough years of calibrating the assessments. But the teacher score, only 20 points of the overall 100 come from that state assessment. The other 80 points come from someplace else.
No, I understand that. It's just that I was under the impression that the same as a school needed an improvement because you had, the 4 scale and you didn't have enough people, enough students in there. If I'm in a school where most of the students are 1s and 2s, and a couple of, get into the 3, but still not enough that you're not you're still penalized. Even though you're improving, you're still penalized. It's not like, it just doesn't seem like a balanced approach.
Right, you're absolutely right. It's not a balanced approach.
So, I guess
This is the template that's being circulating around the state. So again,
I mean, when you say high-stakes standardized testing, it just sounds like that's bad, like testing is bad. And don't agree with that. But that's just me. So, any other comments?
I'm willing to go back to the old system. When I was a kid, there was one teacher, probably 4th grade, 5th grade, that made a comment on testing, and it's something that stuck with me ever since, and there's not many things that stick with me. My head isn't open in one end, out the other within 30 days. But he said to us, I make you a promise. He says, of all the exams and tests you take, he says, there are 2 tests that I'll throw out and give you credit for at any time, he says, because they're the 2 types of exams you never learn anything from. He says, if I give you an exam and everybody gets 0, that's a worthless exam. And then the second one, which took a little more thinking about, he says, if I give you an exam and everybody gets 100, he says, I'll throw that one out too. Because he said, obviously, you learned nothing from either of the 2 exams. A 100% exam, you don't know what it is, you still don't know, so you become rather cocky about it and assume you know everything. The 0 exam is one that's just issued because that's what they said, I have to issue an exam today, but I haven't even got to teach the material. And it doesn't give you any benefit at all, but it certainly busts your bubble. Simple things like that make sense to me. Some of the stuff the state's doing don't make any sense at all.
And again, you know, whether it's this or any other statement, I think it's more whether or not you want to, this was on the docket because the state was about to make a change from making field testing optional to making it mandatory. So,
Right.
you know, so this is a template that was circulated around. And as for high stakes standardized testing, I think that one of the problems is, you know, we all went to school taking standardized tests. They weren't high stakes. We took standardized tests. Our parents got information about how we were doing relative to our peers. Our teachers got information, but nobody was being graded on a single standardized.
No district.
No district, yeah.
Yeah.
Teacher.
As long as I'm being honest, I wasn't going to say negative, but honest, I don't believe anybody should be able to opt out of a test. I would say that right up front. I think parents who do opt out are doing, in my opinion, a disservice to their children. So just get that in while I was getting all the other stuff in. So, any other discussion on this?
Yeah, I would just like to disagree with you.
Sure.
Like to disagree with you, or you just wish to?
I wish to.
Okay.
I don't like to disagree with it, Doug, because he's right so often. But I think that we are being required to administer too many standardized tests. I think we're being required to test our children for too many reasons that aren't good enough to justify the expense of the educational time. I think the only way we have to state, or one of the most effective ways we have to state our opposition to that, is for parents to be able to refuse standardized testing. I think civil disobedience has its place in our society, and I think that's exactly what that is, and I understand the point it's making.
I'll just reiterate that I think, and I'll add a personal comment, that the parents can't opt the kids out.
Sorry.
And for me, I don't believe in the fact that the state would create a situation where a student is caught in an adult war. So I'm a 4th grade student, and to me, you come to school, if you have a standardized test, if you have a teacher-made test, you take the test. And if the adults are having a disagreement about what our educational system is like, it should stay in the adult world. So, you know, and I've shared this before, so I'm at home, I'm a 3rd or 4th grade student, and my parents are in this adult conversation, and so, you know, somehow the 4th grader learns that they can opt out of the test, and maybe they kind of understand a little piece of it, that oh, I get it, there's too much testing. And then I go in, so I'm at home and I'm feeling secure because, I'm going to opt out of the test. But I absolutely love my teacher. And my teacher has to give me this test. And I have to look at my teacher as a 9-year-old and say, I'm not taking your test. So I think my point of contention, sorry, Dan, getting a little too demonstrative here, is that we should not, I don't believe there should be an opt-out because I don't believe we should be putting children in this situation. So I can't reiterate enough that, we're having this adult controversy about assessment, and we're putting our kids right smack in the middle of it.
I agree with you on that point.
So we'll table this for now? Or?
That's not, that's a board decision, that's not my decision.
I don't think it's going to make any difference one way or the other, honestly, at the state level. But
Well, we've sent several letters to the state for which I thought there was really no hope of seeing any action on, but I'd still like to send this letter, not necessarily in this form. As Doug pointed out, there's some details here that we could adjust to better, represent our ideas. I would like to see us put a resolution on the next board meeting agenda.
Well, if we change this, who's going to do it? If I change it, you're not going to like it. Just be upfront whether you're there. It would need like a group at least of 3 or less.
As long as the letter overall is stating our opposition to field testing.
Well, see, but I'm not opposed to field testing.
Not at all?
No.
You don't
No,
have any problem with unlimited field
I
testing?
think that you can't have it both ways. You can't say that a test is no good and then refuse to do testing to make it better. That's just my opinion.
I don't think you heard the unlimited.
But, should 4 of you want to send this letter, then that's fine.
Well,
This is a democracy right up here,
All right. Is there enough interest in sending this letter that I should spend the time to walk over it in detail and submit a
I think that's
letter
fine.
for the next board meeting? I'm just looking for heads to nod.
Mine's nodding yes. I'd be in favor of a rewrite.
Yeah, rewrite the proposal.
Okay?
That's good. See, it's a democracy.
Well, that's 2. I'd like to,
Well, it's 3.
Oh, okay.
4.
all right. So I'll take this as the template and fudge the details and submit it for
Review.
comment.
Thanks. And actually, thanks for doing that. All right, I guess we can now move on to everybody's favorite part, is the Netherwood Elementary School presentation. When we are at these buildings, that's the best thing usually in the meeting. Wow. And I have enjoyed the upside-down pictures. I have to tell you that. Thank you for noticing.
I preferred the sideways.
And the sideways
Yeah,
one, yeah, that was,
exercises
I could
like
see those, because I could just lean over. I thought you were just trying to keep us on, on the ball. Yeah. Sneak those.
Something my physical therapist told me that he's keeping me on
Keeping
the
you on the
ball.
ball, yeah?
Well, Nervous Force isn't here to tell me how to run the buttons, so.
Is it on?
Yep, thank you, got that. Okay. Well, it works this way too. So, welcome everybody to Netherwood Elementary on what is right now the coldest night of the year, and hopefully you're feeling a little warm right now in this place. I hope you did enjoy the slideshow. We actually installed a new TV in our front lobby that also has some pictures on it. And every day, we put a couple pictures up, and it's just scenes from around the school. So that was a smattering of some of the pictures from around the school. And later in the presentation, I'll talk about some of the good stuff that's been happening here. To start with, some of our data, and I know you've seen most of this in some of the reports, so I won't go over the details with you. I think the important thing is, and you can see the amount of data, some of the data we're collecting over the course of a year. The bigger part is the last half of the screen. What are we doing about that? So we know we have this achievement on the state ELA in grades 3, 4, and 5. 54% of our third graders were at or above benchmark, that's wonderful. 21% of our fourth graders are at above benchmark. We all went, wow, that's really unusual. So when we look at these things, we meet as grade levels, we meet as a building, and we talk about, so what do we need to do about this? We have those discussions at the building level, the grade level, teacher level, and individual student level. So it's a lot of meeting, a lot of talking, and a lot of planning and coming up with things. As a building, we know from our MAPS testing, the NWA MAPS testing, which our kids do on the computer, which is great stuff and gives us a lot of great information. We know that foundational skills like phonics are a concern in our K2, so we're working on some things. Today at our admin meeting, Melissa Lawson and Ralph R. Smith shared a program called Handprints. Then we're going to take a look at that as a building and see is that something we could adapt that would help our K2 students in phonics awareness. Our upper grades, 3, 5, when they were looking at the testing results, they noticed that building questions in a way that gets kids to refer back to text, having kids pull that direct evidence. Now that's directly from the Common Core. We're trying to emphasize that in our own work with the kids as well. So not teaching the test or mimicking the test, it's actually a really good skill to have kids refer back to text directly. So we're trying to hone some of our instruction that way. Developing stamina in reading and writing tasks. We know that some of our students, this is where they read, this is where they write. So we're trying to give your kids more time working with reading and writing in the classroom. So again, what's important about all that data up top is what are we doing about it? And I think we're on a really good path with our staff and our kids working towards things. You ready? Thank you. So academic work, it is a very busy year in all the elementary schools, and you'll hear this refrain again and again. We are doing the same work as the other 3 buildings. The Units of Study Writing program is new this year to this building. We're in year 1 of the implementation. The listening and learning strands for K2 is new this year for this building. The ELA domains and math modules, we're in year 2 of that work, or year 3. And I can't say enough about the staff in this building. They are meeting a phenomenal amount of time before school, during school, after school, to try and work as grade level colleagues to figure out wrapping their head around these things. I've had teachers bring me the scheduled minutes, how much it takes to put all this stuff into one day. Turns out to about 7 hours at times. What they're learning to do is how do we consolidate, wrap things together, integrate things together to fit in what we need to do. And they're doing a phenomenal job with that work. They really are getting it done. For our parents, because just as much as we're learning about these new programs, our parents are learning as well. And we get questions, what's a bar model? And what's this close reading thing? So we have 2 nights coming up, Common Core Night in January 21st. I have a great representation from the staff that's going to come and help as well. We're going to do an overview of the Common Core shifts, and then the teacher's going to work the parents through some different strategies they can use at home with the kids. That's in January, and then in March we have our annual Spaghetti Supper academic fair, and the last couple of years we've had curriculum focuses to that. We'll do the same thing again. We're getting this work through, again, like I said, the teachers are meeting before, during, after school, but we also have monthly grade level meetings, and we have data team meetings, which are really still in their infancy. We're going to spend more time in the coming months working on that district-wide initiative with data teams. It's hard work, but it's great work, and it's taking a look at kids and trying to define where do we need to focus our instruction for those kids and get that bump that we want from them. Faculty study groups, workshops, webinars. Again, if you go onto My Learning Plan where we track all of our PD, this building is doing a phenomenal amount of work on trying to develop their expertise in working with kids. One of the things I'm really proud of that I've been able to help with a little more directly is integration of Chromebooks into our school day. And as you know, Forrest was able to complete a purchase with the board approval of dozens of Chromebooks. For this building, it's about 80. And we have a bunch set up on our computer lab. They're stationary. The other cart is used daily, and it's set up in the upper hallway right now, but the primary teacher can grab them too. And what you'll see happening if you just stood in that hallway for an hour or two is kids coming and going, taking Chromebooks, going back to rooms. we have taught them how to co-edit Google Documents and how to share those documents with the teachers, and the teachers are providing editing suggestions through the Chromebooks. So there's some really neat stuff happening with the Chromebooks, and actually Dr. Reichert was able to see it when she visited my student council meeting one day, and I had kids taking notes as a secretary on a Chromebook that was then shared with the whole group. So I think we're doing some great stuff with technology as well, and as Greer pointed out, we were noted for the, Mr. Leach's class in 4th grade was noted for the day of coding participation, and that was just fun. So, thank you. Character education is, I'd like to say this building is right at the forefront of it. You look around it, you'll see the posters. Those posters are entirely kid-created. The language, the pictures, the format, everything, those are all from kids. There's actually 3 main ones. There's a cafeteria cares, a playground cares, a hallway cares. That comes from the kids. They created that language about things that they thought were important in this building. It was a year-long process. That's one tiny piece of what we're doing in character education in this building. So responsive classroom has always been a key piece here. Even though there's really about less than 10 people now who've had the formal training, it's a culture that's really been created in this building and continues this day. And if you walk around, you'll see it in the morning meeting, but even more so in how kids interact with each other and what we teach them to do with each other. Peaceful playground, thanks to Ms. Quilty and a committee. We have that now in place for, I want to say, 4 years. Second Step program last year, Marie Dines with the Dutchess County Department of Mental Health included us in the grants award and received a Second Step kit for each class. That's anti-bullying. It's a curriculum directly targeting students and bullying initiatives. So it's been great. Teachers do it. It's take the card out, work the activity with the kids, go on to the next one. Those 2, responsive classroom and Second Step, we have a really good, sound foundation for our programs. I'd like to do some more updates with that if we could. The Friendship Garden, you see the picture here on the right. It's right out in the lobby outside this wall. This comes from Mirta McLean, our social worker. And the idea is that kids have flowers, and they can write an act of kindness that they saw on it, that they witnessed that they did. And there's no names associated. It's just, here's an act of kindness. The neat part about that is you'll walk by it and see classes there, and the teacher pointing out, here's an act of kindness. What do you think about this? It's become an instructional point for the building. The CARES posters I mentioned. Our 5th grade student groups, this just sort of happened. Over the years, we've had our 5th graders doing the caring wall along that back wall. Each 5th grader, when they leave the building, they get a brick and they can decorate it with something they care. That was actually started by students 2 years ago. It was a student-driven initiative, and it's now carrying on its own. So that's a committee. The Claudio Cares Project, where they collect food. It's very cool. You take a grocery bag, you fill it up, you bring it back, grab another bag, and that food gets donated. They've donated hundreds of pounds of food now to local food pantries. And these are all facilitated by our teachers with the kids really doing all the work. And there's a number of things. This year, we really formalized this whole process with an application. We have every 5th grader involved in some activity. So while we don't have formal clubs, we have activities for these kids to get involved with during the school day. Our 5th graders for the last 2 years have done the yearbook. Adults don't do it. A company doesn't do it. We do it. So I'm actually very proud of that, and our 5th graders and our 5th grade team is absolutely out of this world. So the last piece we're looking at, the Olweus Bullying Prevention Program. It's in place at Ralph R. Smith. Last year they did the training. They're implementing it this year. We were approached by the Dutchess Mediation Center to consider that. We've been going through review. We did the survey with them. We found out from our student perceptions, we're actually in a pretty good place. Our kids generally feel very safe here. There's always work to be done. We're considering whether or not that program would accentuate responsive classroom in the Second Step program. So we're still in the evaluation process, but we may attach ourselves to the grant and actually continue that program next year. And then parent and community collaboration. There's the outdoor classroom, by the way. If you're wondering, if you go to the top of the hill and out past the swing sets, you'll find that signpost. That's one tiny piece of what those girls did. If you go back into that trail system, it's mind-boggling to me what those girls and their families did, because the families were out there shoveling away with their kids. And they had a bunch of people carrying wheelbarrows of gravel, chopping down trees. Craig Tiedemann, as you mentioned, did a phenomenal amount of work. And I can't tell you just how much that is appreciated. If you follow that path down, you'll come to an observation platform that was part of an Eagles project Eagle Scout, not an eagle, an Eagle Scout project over a decade ago. So it's just this, as you walk on this property, you see the community connections this place has. I like to think it has deep roots in the community, and you see those pieces as you walk around. This is one prime example of that. I have to mention the Netherwood Road project, so you're completely aware of this. Our road out front is a 45-mile-an-hour zone. And when buses are entering and departing, it's still a 45-mile-an-hour zone with a blind hill at the top. We have a parent who lives right across the street who got a little tired of people's cars in her front lawn because they were spinning off the highway and avoiding buses. She really led the charge, and we're at the point now where the county is petitioning the state to lower the speed limit on the road. Additionally, it looks like we're going to get the flashing yellow lights at either end of the entrance to get people to slow down during school zones, and very cool, solar powered. So she has done a phenomenal job with that, and Elliot Garcia has been a huge help as well. It's this great little piece that after 50 years of this building being here, we might actually get a nice safe entry to the building as well. Arts and Education Committee, like most buildings, we have a great program. Kristen Vincent, our band director, runs this. History and Wheels, author and artist visits, a puppeteer residency. This is cool this year. One of our teachers, Mrs. Miller, who's over here, wrote a grant, Dutchess County Arts Council, and received an award, and we're very fortunate to work with the Ivy Vine players, whose name has completely slipped my brain. She's very cool. She's going to be working with the kids on puppets, and I believe on an ancestor focus, correct? So that will be neat. And you can see our canvas here along the top of the walls, that ugly white blank cinder block spot. There's an artist in the area with Cocoon Theater, Andreas Milan. He also comes to the buildings and does a 5th grade portrait project with all the kids in the district. We're working with him to create a mural up along the top of the ceiling, and it's the beginning of a process of surveying the kids, the community, the parents, the staff about what would it look up there to have a mural for the ages. We're really excited about that project, so that should be starting soon. Our STEM Fair in February is also an amazing student activity that's happening. We had science fair here for many years with 400, 350 projects. We had the gymnasium filled, the cafeteria filled. And what's happened is when Kim Neisel brought in STEM and people saw the hands-on projects and the problem solving, it shifted very quickly in this building. And last year, for the first time, and again this year, our 5th graders will create science project STEM-based activities and teach the rest of the building those projects. And that will be our science fair. Cool. It's a really cool activity. It was beautiful to see it last year. And then they would come back at the academic fair and spaghetti supper and in our evening science fair and do those same activities with the families. So it's this very cool 5th grade activity that they're tying into the community. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our phys ed teacher, Lori Quilty with the fitness days. She invites in a dozen or so people from the outside, yoga experts, dance experts, cardiovascular, and they bring the whole building through physical fitness activities. I don't know how she does it. From about April to June, Lori Quilty is nothing but a blur and does amazing stuff with the kids. And of course, you are cordially invited to our June ice cream social that we have every year on the property. It is a great time. Last year we had a 5th grade, love our 5th graders, we had a 5th grade musical production, summer camp musical, the first time, 20-minute production start to finish, and it was a blast, in addition to really good ice cream. So there is a lot happening at this building. I couldn't be prouder of a place to work and a group of people to work with. And I think that's everything. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you. I just want to make a note too. You heard about the heating problem. If you see these two people with laptops, they've been checking the boilers for the last hour or so in this building just to make sure we're up to speed. And Mrs. Straight, thank you. Mrs. Straight was our nurse for 2 years. She just stepped down, and we're going to miss her dearly. Thank you, Mrs. Straight.
All right. Move on to the mid-year 2014-15 budget review. Dwayne? Me
Oh, welcome everybody on this freezy, frigid night. So I'm here tonight. This is actually the first time we've ever spoke about a current budget in its mid-year place, and it was a request from the board, and a good one, because it was something to be learned from for me and for some other folks in my department as we went through and looked to see where we were halfway this year versus halfway last year, and so on and so forth. So with that being said, we'll start from the beginning. And you'll see where we started in May and started our year in July with $87 million. And that was split, as we split it typically, into our administrative, programmatic, and capital components and the respective percentages. But you'll notice on the bottom, and the next slide will help to explain this, that our budget grows as the year goes by. We start with $87 million, and now we're adjusted to $88 million. I'm going to show you the slide of how that happens. First of all, the carryover encumbrances, things that were not spent last year in last year's budget, get moved over to the following year. So I ordered it in May. It didn't come until July, so that becomes part of the 2014-15 budget. So it's a large portion of it. We received some vouchers for, I believe it was Ralph R. Smith and for Violet Avenue in the amount of $46,000. So another grant opportunity. The bullet aid that we have been using and utilizing is $100,000. There's some transfers from the tax cert reserve of $29,000 due to some of the things that come back to us. Sometimes, occasionally, money comes back to us from clerical mistakes in our favor. HPE leases to cover expenses. The overall profit there is $24,000. Our football gate receipts, we received $2,600 in charging for the football games and people coming. So as you see, it goes up quick. So we started at 87 and wound up at 88. So we call that our adjusted budget. So throughout this entire presentation, we refer to the new budget as the adjusted budget because that's where we are and what it really is.
Wayne, before you go past that slide, because I got a question just before I came over here about if the voters approved an $87 million budget, then how can we be spending $88 million if it wasn't authorized?
Well,
and I think the point is we're not spending that. That's just additional income that has come in that we have to, for accounting purposes, put it somewhere. Is that true?
It's unexpected revenue, the revenues that we didn't know that we were going to have. For example, the voucher program, perfect example. $46,000 comes from the state. We didn't know when exactly it was going to hit our books. It could have hit in May. It could have hit in July. It just happened to hit in the 14-15 school year. So every time that we get new money, we increase the budget via the board. So as a executive board, you do increase the budget formally every single time. That gives you the authorization to spend that money.
Wayne, I've got a question on the carryover encumbrances. That seems like a pretty good sized number there. Did we have a similar number in the last couple of years?
Actually, we've been, that's excellent. We used to be close to $600,000-700,000. And due to some of the work of actually our accounts payable clerk and through the folks in our department, we've gotten that number down really low. So if you looked historically as to where we were versus where we are now, people are really doing a good job at spending their money out of an $88 million budget. $300,000 left over to spend is very minimal in comparison.
Can you walk us through that, just because I want to make sure I understand it, the carryover encumbrances? Give me an example of something or how that occurs and what the timing is.
Sure.
So I can ask.
Let's say that I'm an art teacher and let's say I'm a spring coach and I ordered some additional volleyballs due to some problems that happened at the end, towards the end of the year. And I ordered from a company, and they had a back order on them. So I put my order in, let's say, April or May, and they have back order, so they're not delivered, and therefore not paid for. We can't pay for the item without the invoice. The invoice comes in August 1st, so we have to carry over as a district that order that we made, and then it becomes part of the budget because you're actually paying for it out of August money.
But are you really paying it over? I guess I got to ask that question. I mean, I know the budget year ends June 30th, new year starts July 1st. So, but so let me try to understand this. So an encumbrance is, it's kind of like booking it. In other words, I've made a commitment to spend money. So, just make it simple. I made a commitment to spend $10, but I haven't received the good or service yet. So the $10 is kind of set aside in the 13-14 budget. You can't spend it anywhere else in 13-14. But now, when the new year rolls around, I'm spending it.
That's right.
All right. So, but I guess and I know public budgeting and accounting, government budgeting and accounting is different than a business. In a business, if I had an expense late in December and booked it, it would close in last year's business, and whether I received it or once I knew that I had the stuff there, whether I paid the bill, I hadn't paid the bill yet because but I had the commitment for it and it was booked in the All right, I guess I'm trying to understand, because I guess I don't see that as something that increases this year's budget because, but maybe.
Probably a better example of a higher number, that would be utilities, maybe?
Yeah, that could be.
Prepaid insurance.
Prepaid insurance?
So that's another big one. Like sometimes we prepay our, well, actually, every single year we prepay July and June for our health insurance premiums. So that's another large example. Utilities could happen the same exact way, so that's a good example, Gary.
So obviously, we don't know that number until after the
Right.
budget year.
Mm-hmm.
Budget passes.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, so moving along, so now we start at that place. Our spending progress throughout the 14-15 school year, you can see we've spent close to 62% of our budget already. We've encumbered or placed aside 62% of our budget. We've spent 28% of our budget, and it's important that I note that this is December numbers as of December 1st. So to get ready for this January meeting, I had to kind of put a line in the sand. And our remaining budget left over that hasn't been expensed or like I said, encumbered or set aside is 11% or 10.91%. In comparison with last year, we're right around where we need to be with regards to how much money. On the left-hand side is the current money that we've collected and the prior year. So of course the left-hand side will be a little bit higher than the last year because you have a higher budget and collecting more money. And at this time we spent a little bit more this time last year than we did this year. So you'll see on the right side, the blue is the prior year and the green is the current year. So we've spent a little bit more. Which brings us to our components. I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit, and I'll go through to tell you a little bit about what's involved in each I could be up here for quite a long time if I took every budget code and told you where we were. So I kind of combined them in the most, in a way that made sense, both with the state and how they combine codes, and one that would make sense for us. But anyway, our main administrative expenses, which were pretty much our front of the house, our district office, things like the Board of Ed, the clerk, central office, the business office, all our legal expenses, personnel, insurance, tax refunds, things like that, BOCES administration costs, all belong to this category. And if you took the total of what we have in those codes, our full budget for that amount was $2,501,000. You'll see that we spent about 15%, or we have an available balance of 15% on the left-hand side. We've encumbered about 30%, or $770,000, and we've spent to date $1.3 million, or 53%, so just under 54% on that. But that kind of shows you what we spent, what's sitting aside, getting ready to be spent, and what's left over. And certain things you can't encumber. It's difficult for certain departments to encumber things they don't know about until the time comes up. So there are exceptions to every rule. But we like to get everybody to get POs in the system as quick as possible and as much as possible. So we're do a very good job of that. All right, the next category is our operations, and part of our operations we included public information, facilities, and operations. So both that and our central storeroom, printing, mailing, data processing, and our transportation department are all included in this $10 million budget. You can see that, again, we have an available balance of $1.3 million, which is 13%. We've spent 31% on the right-hand side, $3.1 million, and in encumbered 5.4, or 63.6% of our money is sitting waiting to be spent on our operations codes. So top is the total, encumbered, spent to date, and available balance. And again, this is just December. So you're looking at September, October, November, December, plus some of the small spending that happens over the summer. Next is our largest piece of the budget, and that would be our instructional piece, and rightfully so. The budget for instruction is $44 million. You'll notice there is an available balance of $4.4 million, $4.5 million. And under the instruction code, we have things like dues membership, curriculum and development, administrative costs for our administrators is all in there, in-service training, teaching, all of our teachers. Special education is there, pupil personnel services, library, media, technology, all of our co-curricular and athletics are all included in the instructional portion of the budget. So with that being said, there is an available balance of 10.4%, or $4.5 million. Under the encumbered portion, there's $28 million, which has been set aside, or 63%, and spent to date is $11 million, or 25, almost 26% has been spent out of our instructional budget for the year. Last piece is our second to last piece is our benefits. And this includes all the benefits that we pay out to our employees. So all of our benefits could be things from health insurance to dental to workers' comp to any of the number of things that we pay out for our employees' benefits package. And that's a total of $26,288,000. The available balance is very small there. We're able to encumber just about all of that right away because we know exactly what it is we're going to need within some fluctuation. As you can see, encumbered is at $16,889,000, and that's 64%. And we've spent to date $8,110,000 of those monies. And so we're just about exactly where we need to be. When I looked up the years prior, our system now lets us see year by, side by side, we're exactly where we need to be. This is one that's changed a little bit, so I took a little time to talk to you about it. Debt service is budgeted in the general fund, and always has been and always will be for transparency reasons. We pay X amount of dollars for our bonds, we pay X amount of dollars for our transportation ban expenses, and the list goes on and on of what we pay debt for. And the auditor most recently in one of our audits asked us to move that money after we budgeted it in the general fund into what's called the debt service fund. So we've listened to that, but we still continue to budget our debt service information in our budget so people understand what we're paying for our mortgages and our debt service. So debt service is initially budgeted through the general fund, and then again, like I said, transferred into the debt service fund via a transfer, which we'll see brand new for this year. And you can see what we transfer it for. Special aid is our summer school program for special education students, our food service program, and the rest is all the debt service piece that I just mentioned, which is the entire portion of all of our bonds and bans and interest payments and all of that type of thing that's paid. But our interfund transfers are a total of $5 million, and they're all encumbered because we know what they are right away.
Wayne, can I ask you a question on the last slide? On the food services, does that mean they're negative of $115,000 on their budget? That we're transferring money to them?
We've transferred, yeah, for
So
ERS.
does it mean they're going to be double that, most likely in the red?
They've
end of the
been
year?
holding on in the black. They've been using up their fund balance, but they're holding on in the black.
Okay, well, what's the concern for the new food service director?
Certainly, the conversations we'll be having.
Okay.
All right, the other side of the budget is our revenues. This is where our money comes in. As you can see, the majority of all of our revenues come in through the tax levy. Second up is our state aid. We do get a little slice of impact aid. We do have a planned fund balance of $3.5 million that we set out during budgets, and you'll see other aids that come in a small amount, and they're tinier amounts, but lots more of them. So with regards to our revenues and taxes, you'll see we've collected just about all of our taxes. Any of the taxes that we haven't collected will be made whole on those in the end of March by the county. The STAR tax relief program, we received that check, so that's a zero balance. And then we've also received all our interest and penalties on taxes. So anybody that paid a little late or owed some interest on prior years paid us that money as well. Here's our state aid. State aid does not come in as timely as does the tax levy. We have very little to no control over when that comes in. We're given a schedule. Typically, most of our state aid comes in March and in the spring, but you can see all the different state aids that do come in. Lottery grant comes in August, so we get that one early. You'll see we already have that one. Our state aid comes in throughout the year. BOCES aid, excess cost. Our textbook, hardware, software, and library all come in March. And then there's some other miscellaneous state aids that come in throughout the year. But that makes up the picture of our state aid. And then I mentioned there was a whole bunch of little things that do come in, and these are them. They equal 1.1. I won't read them in detail to everybody, but you can see what's what we plan for, what we've received so far, and what we haven't received yet. And these are the other side of the budget. This is what helps to make up what we think we're going to get in any given year. So we're right on target again with our revenues. Again, when compared with last year and compared with prior years, we're just about where we need to be with regards to what we've collected. We're very lucky, school district, in the fact that we do not have to borrow to get to next points. There's a lot of districts out there that have to borrow revenue anticipation notes or tax anticipation notes because they don't have enough money to make their bills prior to making the bills. So they make small-term loans to get through to that point in time. We're in a financial position where we do not have to do that. I think the first year I was here, we were still doing that, and very quickly thereafter had stopped that and haven't done so since. Impact aid, I mentioned. We get federal impact aid. You see that has come in, and that's for our federal lands. And the more of that comes in, we don't know how much comes in, so it's very difficult to budget for that. But you'll see about $26,000 has come in so far this year. And then the planned appropriated fund balance, which I mentioned, which we present during our budget presentation, is put in right away. The 3.5 and on an accounting side of things is added right to the revenue piece of our books. So with that being said, that's where we are, halfway through the year. Again, I do mention that we're exactly where we need to be, spending at a rate of what we need to spend. We always have to push people to spend their money. I always say, the more money that you have, the harder it is to spend it. it is that case. You know, the more you have, or the more programs you have to put forward with additional funds, you know, the more time it takes to get that stuff done. So, you know, as we become more program rich, it does become difficult to spend on top of all the grants that come, the federal grants that come in and all the other sources of things. It does become a very difficult thing to spend all our money in a timely fashion all the time. But anyway, so with that being said, there's some highlights. We are rounding the corner of our budget season. Budgets are due this month. Everybody's been working really hard on it and meeting with their appropriate folks, meeting with me to ask questions about appropriate things, and everybody's exactly where they need to be. So, you know, into February and March, we'll have our budget presentations with regards to the 15-16 budget. It's almost hard to believe we're looking at 15-16, you know, already, but yeah, we're here. But there's some things that are pretty important that'll affect us for this year's budget, and I just wanted to get them down. It's kind of like a little sneak preview. One of the biggest things, and I'm sure you've read this in the Poughkeepsie Journal, but the teachers' retirement system decreased from an increase from our normal increase of 17.56% all the way down to 13.5%, which is humongous for us. It's about $1.2 million in retirement savings. The only offside to that is that we're not getting our DHIC health insurance premium, so they kind of cancel each other out a little bit. And that leaves over $1 million in revenue that we will not receive. So while we're getting more expense, we're not getting on the revenue side, so it kind of balances itself out. But they're both, you know, certainly the TRS going down is a good sign for us right now. The district must adhere to the property tax cap and freeze once again this year. A little caveat this year that we're waiting patiently to get some guidance from the state from, and that's that we have to follow a government efficiency plan, and that means we have to save $568,000, and we need to present that to New York State by June 1st. That's the rule in order for us, for folks to get their tax cap freeze checks back. So last year, all we had to do was be in the tax cap. This year, it's, yes, you have to be in the tax cap and you have to save $568,000. And that's all districts throughout New York State.
Excuse me, Wayne, have you figured out where we're going to save that $560,000?
We're working on it, yes. I have ideas. There's certainly lots of different ways we can go, but they have given us absolutely zero guidance as to what
qualifies.
Yeah.
Wayne, before you do that, does that mean that if, say, the rate is 1.5 instead of 2, does that mean you have to take a 1% off that and our budget can only increase by 0.5?
Two totally separate things. Tax cap will be the same formula it always has. Put that aside. So after I get all the pieces for the tax cap, we'll know, okay, we can go up 2%, we can go up 2.2%, we can go up 1.8%. Put that totally aside. Take this one. This is totally separate. This is just a savings efficiency. It was a way for the government to ask us to save money on our tax levies. So it's 1% of our tax levy, or like I said, $568,000 that we have to show savings in over a 3-year period of time, and then people will get their refunds back, like the checks.
So
everybody
we're not
got.
saving, we don't have to save $568,000 this year?
Yes, we do.
You have to do it 3 years in a row?
Yep.
That's $1.5 million, 1.6, really. Yeah.
Whatever our 1% of our tax levy. Yeah.
And that savings, you have to save that money in order for the taxpayers. Some of us, I think, we just got a check back from the state for the increase in what our taxes were last year.
No, I get that part, but where is that money coming from?
It's the increase in taxes from 2012-13 to 13-14. They get 13-14 to 14-15, excuse me. So in other words, what we paid.
If the tax levy, if it's not coming from the tax, where's the money coming from? I mean,
creativity. Creativity. That's the point. Is
the state has a surplus of money.
this is an incentive that the state has created, or a motivator that the state has created for us to find ways to be more efficient. And it can be things like sharing services, or it's conceived of being sharing services with town or other things that might help help the community save money. Right? That's why I was curious as to whether you had any ideas. It's
Yeah, we've been thinking about
it's a
them.
great idea. It just doesn't have a whole lot of guidance yet.
Yep, none.
Dwayne, on the health insurance premium that we're not receiving this year, what's the reason we're not getting it, and will we recover that the year after?
Nope. The DHIC consortium is our health insurance consortium many districts belong to, and they make a decision each year in June as to whether or not they give a full month's premiums back to the school districts as as a way for them to get rid of fund
So it
balance
may happen again
in the following
future year. Yeah.
Yep.
It really just depends on the expenses and the premiums.
It's on the
and-
insurance companies.
whether
Yeah,
they
how
can or
things
they
work
can't.
out.
Right.
So that ends our show. If anybody has any questions, I could certainly answer anything that you have about where we are mid-year. Again, we have a preliminary budget coming up. I believe it's the next January meeting. We'll get into a little bit more detail. And then in February and March is where the detail starts to come in as the budgets are calculated and figured. But really, March is the time where we do our admin program and capital budgets and Proposition 2. And it all starts to come together in April. And, before we're here, it's May. So that's where we are right now with budget.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
We'll now have 6.4, new course proposal, Advanced Placements Physics 1 and 2. Good stuff.
Nah.
You have a...
No. This is great. This is really good news.
It is.
This is really good news.
Yeah?
No, that's it. The book was too heavy. Thanks, Wayne. So just to clarify, the proposal is for AP Physics 2. I'll explain. We're already teaching AP Physics 1 this school year, so just to clarify. I'm Kim Neisel, the Director of Math and Science, and just to give you some quick history on the AP Science courses, the AP College Board has recently, in the last several years, kind of revamped and revised the AP courses. So every teacher, whether or not you're new to the subject of that AP Science, had to resubmit a syllabus. So we've done that. I think it was 2 years ago, we submitted AP Biology, and then last year we submitted AP Chemistry. He's here tonight, so I want to recognize Glenn Berger, who submitted AP Environmental Science, actually as a new course. So that was kind of in the mix, so thanks, Glenn. And then we submitted this year AP Physics 1. They changed the AP Physics course quite differently in that they broke it up into 2 courses. So we rolled our AP Physics course into AP Physics 1, and that's what we're teaching this year. So the proposal is for AP Physics 2 for September.
Okay.
So AP Physics 1 just quickly goes through Newtonian mechanics, work, energy, power, mechanical waves and sound, and electrical circuits. The AP Physics 2 course, heavy. That's that textbook, and it's for both courses, AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2. So AP Physics 2 covers electricity and magnetism, fluids, quantum and nuclear physics, no questions on those, geometric and physical optics, and thermodynamics. So again, you have the textbook that we're also proposing. We'd like to adopt that textbook for both courses. We think we can do the purchase in September. It's about $13,000, $223.72 per book, 60 books. And the way we want to work the Regents and the physics together, I'll explain, is it will have really no impact on staffing or fiscally aside from the textbook. What we plan to do is take one of our Regents physics sections and teach AP Physics 1. So kids will take AP Physics 1, they'll sit for the AP exam in May and cover the material. They'll also sit for the physics Regents and cover all of that material and fulfill their lab requirements for the New York State Regents in June. So kids will take both courses. But it'll be called, again, AP Physics 1. They'll take both tests, I should say, not courses. So they'll take both exams in June and in May. And then kids who took either any Regents Physics or AP Physics 1 would have the opportunity to go on and take AP Physics 2. So there's really no impact on staffing, since we're going to kind of envelop one of the Regents classes with AP Physics 1 and combine them. And then we'll have AP Physics 2. And that'll be actually our 5th AP Science course at the high school. So we have a pretty rigorous program. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, when are we going to get electronic books and not have to?
Yeah.
I mean, if I was a student, unless I left that in the room, forget it, I'm not going to carry it around. I mean, that's,
Stealing my thunder, Doug.
huh?
You're stealing my thunder.
These questions.
Oh, yeah, oh, well.
Want to speak in unison?
I think you should get some phys ed credits.
Yeah, phys ed credits.
Thing around. I mean, a little weightlifting,
Yeah, we can look into that. The kids need the devices is the issue. I can tell you Glenn, actually, who I just spoke about, has access to one of the AP Environmental Science textbooks on an ebook, and he has a class set of iPads that he can access that book on. So we are looking to move in that direction, but we need approval for the book either way.
Right, no, I understand, and then probably electronic version of this book
cheaper.
is $290. you
Yeah.
know, It's like,
Yeah, it's actually, not,
Yeah.
'cause you're paying for the intellectual material, not for the
Yeah.
paper. So,
but it just seems like we got these, you know, it would be nice to, you know, use them in the classroom as the text, for textbooks, and I think that's the direction the Technology Committee wants to go in, and Steve has been talking about this for how many years? I mean, 5? Yeah, okay. So I'm hoping someday, while
So I
I'm
can look
still
into the
here,
ebook too.
that
And
we
there
do
might
this.
be a way to do kind of a combination of, 30 textbooks and 30 ebooks or something like that to move in that direction too. The book is very problem-rich if you look through it. There is a lot of text, but it's even really pretty small print. It's full of problems, a lot of inquiry-based and discovery-based problems, and that's why the College Board revamped the AP's science classes for that inquiry-based. So there's a lot of problems in the book.
I mean, ideally, all this material could be accessible from the internet.
Yep,
I mean, that's
agreed.
where it should be.
Yep.
I mean, if Sal Khan can do it, I don't know why the other people can do it. And he does it with donations. The Khan Academy is free to use. And he can, if you can, I bet you half the problems that are in his book are in his physics section. So,
And I should actually give credit too to Dorothy Finley. She's the physics teacher who wrote the proposal. She has increased the enrollment. We have 2 sections of AP Physics 1 that we've had for a couple of years now. And
do it.
she's also one of our
cameras
master
not on.
teachers. Other questions?
Statistical
It looks
approach to
like
irreversible process.
This
I like
might,
this.
this might have a heavy reliance on labs than either other physical sciences or anything similar to it right now. Is that impression right?
I don't think the number of lab hours will change that she, is currently doing for the AP Physics, did for the AP Physics or is doing for the AP Physics 1 course. And you have to do labs, but there's no time commitment for an AP science course. There's no certain number. She will have to fulfill the commitment of 1,200 lab minutes for kids to sit for the Regents exam. So they'll do that 1,200 minutes and probably additional labs to cover the AP material too.
Okay. Is that being driven by the College Board's recommendations for the class, or is that something, a goal that we generated ourselves?
Well, in order for us to offer the kids the Regents, in addition to the AP, they have to fulfill the Regents requirement of 1,200 minutes.
Okay.
State
That's
requirement,
state.
yeah. The AP
Okay.
doesn't, you have to provide the lab experiences for the AP courses, but there's no time, like, limit.
Okay.
So if I'm taking AP Physics, why would I want to even do the Regents? What good does it do?
Well, it's another science Regents. You know, you get credit for that. They're starting to look at the different diploma types. I know it's more of a local diploma, but there is a STEM avenue for some of the new diploma types that they're talking about, which means taking an additional math or science Regents exam and passing it. It's done in a lot of districts in social studies as well, where they combine an AP and a social studies class.
Okay, as I said to you earlier, before the meeting, if you go to school outside of New York State, they could care less if you have taken a Regents. I mean, they're looking at AP classes. So, I mean, if it came down to one or the other, I would certainly recommend students to take the AP class.
Yeah, and we're calling the class AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2,
Right.
and in addition, they'll just cover the Regents material and do the labs and take the Regents. I think it's just an added, you know, plus for kids to do both.
Any other questions?
Generally, I think they do really well on the Regents.
Yeah.
The
Well-
AP is harder, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
I
feel
know.
feel good, I guess.
Right. It is.
Most really high-level engineering schools don't even take the AP classes, so it's I know my sons, none of them counted at Carnegie Mellon, so.
Yeah, and the good thing is, like, a lot of the research shows that just sitting and taking the AP
But
course.
the rigor is
exactly
what it is, yeah,
prepares you for
absolutely.
college and
Absolutely.
and career.
No, I'm not advocating you shouldn't take these classes because,
Yep.
you know, you're not going
Right,
to
you
get credit.
wouldn't get
Because
in
if you don't
credit,
take these
no.
classes, you're not going to get
You're
in
not
those
gonna
schools.
get in, yeah.
Anyway,
So,
right.
And,
They're not going to give you the credit
and-
for the course.
I think the physical sciences are really important, and I applaud the activities and the grant writing done to get this set up. So it's a competitive world out there, and the more you can demonstrate that you've taken rigorous courses, the better off you're going to be. So I think it's a great idea. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah. 4,000 pages.
Okay.
We're really steaming it tonight.
This brings us to my other great love, which is the arts, which is, I'm very pleased to see these courses
Yes.
come up, yes.
Mine as well. So I just wanted to present 4 new art electives. And when I started this year, the art teachers and guidance counselors came to me and said, we'd like to broaden what we have. We have a really great classical program that goes with the studio, drawing, painting, right into honors, AP art, and we send a lot of kids off to art school with great scholarships and that kind of thing. But guidance counselors and art teachers were saying, we'd like to have some art for those kids that weren't actually going into art, but would still like to explore a little bit and basically maybe just have a little fun with it. And the proposals that you've received, I'm really excited because I think that they really align with the Common Core. There's a lot of landscape, of course, really talks about observation, that kind of thing. Art history has got more of the writing and reading. And for that student that might not be the artist, but still would like to get the art credit and is interested. And crafts is something that is a little bit different, but still has that historic bent. So it's going to be like ceramic carving, mosaics, weaving, and finding out about the cultures that those arts came from. So it gives them a little bit of the cultural, information and learning about that. And then not visual storytelling, we already have that. Visual journaling is going to be really almost like a really reflective class where they're learning about journaling, keeping that journal, but also using text to incorporate into their art and just learning about how to do that. So, we're just putting that out there to give more options. We think that we have the 3 studio classes. We've got Studio A, Studio B 2D, and Studio B 3D. And what we'd like to do is just stick with one studio class and then let everyone branch out into their, whatever of these electives they'd like, or else go right to drawing, and then they do the circuit to the AP. So I don't think we don't expect it to require more faculty, but just a little bit different options and avenues to go.
Any comments from the board? I just have one. Many times the kids that take physical sciences and others don't get a chance to take art classes, which I think are important. And sometimes in today's schedule, a daily schedule, they won't be able to get that in. So I'll just put a plug in for an extra period in the day, because I think there's some kids that could really benefit from a longer school day.
Yeah. That's up to
as long as I'm on a roll here tonight.
Good job, Mark. And true, Doug, and just to say, these courses that are semester would allow like a senior who has been working along and didn't have any room for the first 3 years, but now might have a semester to just grab onto something. So they'll allow for that too, but yeah. That's a question.
And it will make a difference on their applications to college. I guarantee you that might be the one course or something that puts them a little bit above somebody else who's taken similar AP courses.
Absolutely, right.
That they've shown an interest in other things and broader.
And I'd comment on the AP conversation, because I can't tell you how many people came back to me when I was principal to say, we might not have gone to like an Ivy League school, but a state school, and we were out of there in 3 years because of the APs that we took at FDR, and how other schools did not, like their roommates did not have those options.
Right. I didn't mean to imply that they weren't, but certain schools don't take them.
Absolutely. But a remarkable amount of kids did come back, and parents to say, we didn't have to spend 4 years in college. We went on to our master's or whatever. So it's a great thing.
That's big money, too.
It is, yes. They were very pleased. Yes.
Hey, Barb, can you explain we were talking about we only need one studio and some of these classes to move on? Can you explain in a little more detail what you mean?
No, not even any of these classes to move on. We are our general track is studio, and then to drawing, painting, and then the honors and the AP, if that's where you want to go. We have been having the studio in 8th grade now, so we have actually 2 sections of 8th graders taking the studio, so those students can go right on to drawing. And we also have the option for students that didn't take it in 8th grade, because the 8th graders, high achieving 8th graders are packed with their schedule too, so some couldn't do that. But so the option to audition or just, have a conversation with the high school art faculty to see if they could just go right into drawing. So these courses aren't any prerequisite or any part of any prerequisite to go. They're just basically
Electives.
Extensions and yeah.
And what's the minimum number of students who will have to hold this class?
We generally target for 15.
Right.
15?
So thank you, and I really just want to say that, this is really being responsive to changes in the curriculum, student needs, opportunities to expand what we offer, challenge, choice, to see art classes offered to art students who may not be the traditional art students. So thank you both for responding to all the needs of our students.
And I'll say Cynthia Petrovitz, Sarah Bussart, and Wendy Gross wrote the curriculums, not the curriculum yet, but the proposals, so thanks to them.
All right. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, may I have a motion for public participation, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We are now in public participation. Anybody would like to address the board, please step over to the microphone. And now that we held this long enough so that everybody else left, it looks like we're in...
Let's talk about field testing.
Perfect planning.
No.
And no takers. Can I have a motion to exit public participation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Let me just back down here. Well, we kind of had a board discussion on.
I was going to say, we had
field
plenty of
testing.
board discussion tonight.
So I think we
Skip right
can.
by that.
If there's nothing else, we'll move on. May I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yes. Under claims auditor report, I noticed that there was no resolution to the claims submitted. I was wondering how we move forward from there.
For which one?
Yeah, the claims auditor report talked about 2 claims submitted that didn't follow the Board of Ed policy. And under the resolved column, there's no answer.
Yeah, I got an email from Joan today saying that she was just emailing the people back, telling them that it didn't fit board policy. So I think they were denied.
Yes, they ain't getting paid. That's what it means.
Yes, they were denied.
Yeah.
She always gives me a shout. I always get an email. I agreed with her, the way she looked at both she and Pete both said, you haven't got the proper receipts. Some are handwritten. You don't know what they are. The thing that troubled me was that the person, who I don't know who it was, that's not involved, went to their principal, got nowhere, went to another principal, evidently, who told Pete to pass it through, which I find that's something that should never happen.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you because I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's probably because I have it in my mind and I'm not speaking it
Yeah,
outright.
no, that's right.
The forms were incorrect.
Yes.
Some were handwritten.
Okay.
They were rejected by Pete, who is the one that first sees it in the district office. The person who submitted it went to their principal and said, I want my money, or whatever they said. I don't know what they said. Said, sorry. The person went to another principal and said, this is the situation. How come I didn't get my money? And that, evidently, from what I heard, was that principal then told Pete to authorize it.
This is in the same building?
I don't know.
Yeah, I have a little background on this. I'm not sure it was a principal, but it went to
Or
one
administrator,
principal.
I'm sorry, yeah.
And unfortunately, what happened here is that the cash register at the place that they went for lunch broke. So they got handwritten receipts. And they submitted them because they had nothing else. The cash register broke, and I do have to say that I was one of the people that said, let the claims auditor decide, because at least give it a shot. What do we do when you go to we were supposed to support local first, and their cash register breaks, or their receipt thing, printer, whatever. So at any rate, they've been denied, they've sent back. I don't think anybody's going to the poorhouse, but I think what happened here was it was a legitimate conference, and 2 people went to the same place, and the ticker tape thing ran out, so they had no receipts, and they said, but we can't get reimbursed, and so the store owner hand wrote them a note.
Well, does it have the printed name of the restaurant and all? Anybody could write a...
Right, no, I don't think they didn't They only got what the deli owner wrote on a piece of paper, and it obviously wasn't enough.
Okay. That's why it was rejected, anyway.
You could, it's problematic, and, again, in the non-public world, if it's a small dollar amount, you probably don't even need a receipt, but I guess, my advice to them, unfortunately, because our policy is pretty tight and we have to be very careful about this, I would advise them that, save those expenses, and if we obviously, if we aren't able to reimburse them, and I understand that, they can deduct them on their taxes as a business or work expense. So, it's not ideal, but it's just because it's small dollars, but it's better than nothing. So, it's what it is. So, just a point of information too for the public. I think the board knows this already, but when the board's ultimately responsible for the audit of the claims, if you will, or the payment of bills. But that's a huge undertaking in a district or institution of this size. So. You then typically hire an individual or pay an individual that becomes what's called the internal claims auditor, and they're the ones that, and once you have appoint an internal claims auditor, there's no appeal to the board. We have lost our authorization to stick our nose in it. Right. So, I mean, obviously we give guidance if she has questions about policy.
Makes
or
a point to
right.
give me an email and say, I'm doing that.
Right, but she certainly doesn't need our permission. She holds the fort. And, if there's concerns about policy, then, she would bring that to us to say, hey, you might want to look at this because.
Which we have.
Right, and we have, right. But we don't, there is no appeal to the board. We've lost our authority to audit claims once an internal claims auditor is appointed.
Okay, are there any other questions on the consent agenda? All those in favor, please? Opposed? Thank you. Moving now to special education. I have a motion for 10.1 special education placements, please.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
I reviewed the packages presented to us and recommend its adoption.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That brings us to 10.2, first reading of policy 4000, student learning standards and instruction guidelines. Oh. So these are NYSMA recommended. Okay, we're changing the name from student learning objectives and instructional goals, took me a while to remember, and to student learning standards and instructional guidelines.
Semantics.
Any other questions on this particular one?
Under the standard 4, you totally removed the acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to incorporate physical fitness into their daily lives. Is that because it doesn't fit to the new title? Because you have anything about physical fitness in the rest of it?
Good catch. I'm not sure.
Policy committee.
Can we look at that for the second reading?
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you, Jeff, just tell me exactly where you're looking?
Under standard 4, talked about college and career readiness and effective use of language, vocabulary in a sense of rules for standard written and spoken English, but you're striking all students will require the knowledge and skills necessary to incorporate physical fitness into their daily lives.
Yeah.
Totally changed the objective. That's why I'm
Right.
just curious.
We can look at that, and I don't think that was a strike that I recommended or that the policy subcommittee recommended, and maybe Debbie can help me, because we didn't have a conversation about that. I'm wondering if it was part of NYSBA's.
It was NYSBA's recommendation. All the language that was removed from the policy was their recommendation to replace with the standards rather than the guidelines.
Actually, though, you know what? If you read farther down, Standard 9 talks about physical fitness. So it probably just moved it to a different location. So it looks like they've added standards, or I guess they call them standards now instead of objectives. Yeah.
Yeah,
So what they
right.
did is they
It
must have
did
moved
add
language
standard
around,
9.
changed numbers, and so number 9 deals with physical fitness, so.
Yep,
Thank you, Kevin.
thanks.
All right, any other comments? So we'll move along. Hmm?
We need to act on that. We just do questions. I need a motion and a vote.
I thought we were going to have two. You want, this is first reading.
Right.
Never
To
opened it
accept.
up.
Oh, I never,
it.
oh,
We
to
never
inspect it.
opened
Yeah,
it.
okay. I never asked for a motion. I need a motion for
So moved.
10.2.
Second.
And we already had a discussion. All those in favor? I thought this was one you didn't vote on. That was my problem. I have a motion for 10.3, new course curricula,
So
which
moved.
is the physics and the art stuff that we just talked about. We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now for the heavyweight here. I have a motion for 10.4, adoption of college physics
Second.
textbook.
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion? Yep.
Yeah, as long as I don't have to carry it.
Yeah.
Do they have to pass a physical fitness test to carry the book? We don't want anybody getting hurt.
It's a heavy book, yeah.
It's heavy knowledge, literally.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. May I have a motion for 10.5 bid award for capital project Phase 4A, part of the HMS heat upgrade?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? I just point out we're saving money here, so that's, thank you, Gary, who pretty much recommended that we go out for bid, so, all those in,
Well, we're saving money, but
well, we'll see. It apparently, yeah, we're saving money. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. I have a motion for 10.6 for volunteer coaches for girls JV, boys JV for basketball, and girls modified, and for gymnastics, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. I have a motion for 10.7, new position, which is a 1.0 behavioral teaching assistant position for special education.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry, I just was thinking, you apologize, I was kind of asleep at the
Okay.
wheel. Back at the volunteer coaches.
Yep.
Let's just make sure that, the district and the, athletic department is paying attention to getting these on the agenda, because I have a feeling if they're volunteer coaches, that they've probably been serving. If you look at
serving
this-
for quite a
If you
while.
look at the sports that are involved, we're
Yeah,
well into the
basketball,
season.
yeah, that's
You know, this is no different than appointing a coach who's being paid by us. It's not, they're not allowed to do anything until we've made that appointment, because we know that there's been local districts that have had problems with volunteer coaches, and, it's appropriate that we do approve them, but,
Right.
we don't want to find ourselves on the wrong end of something if something happens, and we have somebody serving in that capacity, and we weren't even aware they were doing it. So, I have absolutely no problem. I thank them for their service, but that needs to be done before the season begins, unless somebody's going to tell me they haven't done anything until we approved it, so, which I would find hard to believe.
Okay, that's a good point,
Yeah,
Kevin.
so let's just pay attention to that.
I mean, as volunteers, they're required to go through the state's screening, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, they are.
And also required to take several courses.
Yep, for coaching.
But,
Yep.
we have to consent to it. I mean, a person doesn't
Yep.
come work for us until we
Consent.
approve it, so
Oh, no,
it's
yeah.
no different,
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Moving on to 11.1. I have a motion for public participation.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are now in public participation. If anybody would like to address the board. Mr. Hughes, you're our last hope here.
Yeah.
Okay. May I have a motion to exit public participation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. There are no other matters necessary for the board at this time. That's 12.1. 13.1, board subcommittee meetings. Do you have any subcommittee meetings that,
I will say that the Dutchess County School Board Association has filled the position of the new executive director, and it's Lori Rich, who I do not know, but Lori is
From,
a
Rhinebeck.
veteran
Rhinebeck.
of the
Rhinebeck, I
Rhinebeck
think.
Board of Ed, 14 years.
Right.
So, and they're meeting tonight, I think, so I couldn't be there.
oh, that's right, that's right. Any other committee meetings? I don't think. Not for this meeting? We're moving right along here. Okay. Upcoming meetings. The next Board of Education meeting is January 22nd, 7 o'clock, Violet Avenue School. And that's it for upcoming meetings. There is no need for an executive session, so may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? We're now adjourned. Thank you.
Yay.